Just to introduce Rob. Rob Spaniard is the Chief Investment Officer at Rezco Asset Management. He's been there since 2004. Before that, Rob founded and listed Sovereign Foods, where he served as their CEO. And Rezco Asset Management, they're a mid-sized manager. TRG has supported them for many years through quite a few cycles already. And they've really got a proven investment philosophy that we believe works through those cycles. They're also quite uniquely positioned to use artificial intelligence and machine learning. They're well ahead of the curve in that regard, and that helps them process the really large data sets that investment management often requires. As I said, TRG's utilized the Rezco funds in various shapes and forms for its investment solutions for their clients for many years. And, firstly, I must say, Rob, that looking at how your funds have performed over these extreme market conditions we've had this year, I think you guys must be pretty pleased with how that has. I mean, if we look at the Rezco Equity Fund, which is what we use as part of the building blocks of our fund of funds, you guys have really weathered the sell-off since mid-February pretty well. Just looking at some short-term numbers, and I know short-term is not great for any of us, but it feels like a lot has happened in these few short months. Since the beginning of Feb, the all shares down over 20%. Rezco Equity Fund is down about half of that, 10.5%, and the general equity peers are down 17.3%. So clearly you've managed to avoid a lot of the downside for clients invested, and this must give you a good...
Can you hear Devin talking?
I can hear you
returns. Yes, can everyone hear?
I can hear you fine.
I can hear
Good.
you.
Okay, fantastic. If all the participants, if you guys wouldn't mind just muting your mics, just so we don't get any background noise. Rob, so tell me, how are you and your team feeling at the moment?
Yeah, Devin, it's sort of scary times. Our balance funds, where we could obviously express our best investment view in terms of asset class, are actually up for the year. Because obviously it seemed to be the crisis was coming. We'll talk a bit about that later, while we felt there was very clear indications up front. We've been saying to a lot of our clients, this wasn't a black swan. It was this grey rhino terminology. So it's concerning times. I think we're in for a hangover recession, internationally and locally. And it's just, you've got to be a little bit careful. There are opportunities in this sort of market environment. There are opportunities, but to go diving in too quickly is dangerous. We protect our clients a lot. Our funds all had a very good year last year. We're up a lot, and we managed to protect them, not to give it all back, protect them through this year. So we're comfortable with our positioning where we are, but it's always got to be a little bit of a scratchy environment.
And Rob, you mentioned that kind of black swan and grey rhino. Maybe you can just explain to the guys the difference with what you see. Maybe first of all, what a black swan is, because there's a lot of talk about that at the moment, and what you guys term a grey rhino.
Nassim Taleb wrote a very interesting book about grey swans, and I think he did us a favour as asset manager, and he probably did the industry a disservice, because anything that you can afford not to look when you cross the road and everything's a black swan. Sorry if I'm mixing the metaphor up a bit. So black swan is this big nasty event that just happens. You couldn't have seen it coming. It just comes out of nowhere, and it's just there. One morning there's a black swan in the swimming pool. It just arrived from nowhere. And so that's what Nassim Taleb wrote that book, and the industry loves that. You catch on to it, and it's just everything's a black swan. I mean, you've probably seen it quoted in a lot of places. But there's a counter view, which a person by the name of Michelle Walker wrote a very interesting book, but it's a counter view that comes out of that. In any case, one that's always been part of our risk methodology. You get this concept of a grey rhino. Now, grey rhino is big. It's reasonably predictable. You can see it coming. If you're nimble, then you react quickly. So if you can you can see a grey rhino. It's big. But act quickly. You don't have too much time, and be nimble and get out of the way. The smart thing when you see a rhino that might charge at you is to get out of the way. 2008 GFC was similar. Was in fact also grey rhino. That crisis took even longer than this one to bubble. The subprime crisis was bubbling in 2007, well before the. If you saw that book that was out, that movie was out, The Big Short, actually reasonably good analysis of it. That crisis was bubbling, and so you've got to have part of your risk. So it's part of our risk methodology. Are there any big dangerous events out there that could really hurt our clients? If we see them, we need to take evasive action. And sometimes they don't always happen. They're highly probable. Another example of that is the ANC elective conference in 2017. We did a lot of research, and it became very clear that it was too close to call whether the Zuma camp were going to win or the Ramaphosa camp, and we felt you needed to take some protection if you didn't know how it was going to go. It could be dangerous to you for your investment returns. So it's very much built into our risk methodology of trying to see are there any big events out there.
Yeah, and I guess there were a few people that were scenario planners and that were calling a pandemic type risk for quite a while. I mean, I guess the timing was impossible to get right. But would you guys?
Sorry, Karen Devon, I'm interrupting.
Go for it.
No, but see, that was a funny thing. The Chinese had locked up 75 million people. That's 725 million people on restricted movement. You had prominent economists like the Neil Ferguson of Imperial College, Lipsitz at Harvard, who were saying, well, this is going to spread fast, it's going to affect 70% of the world's population if we don't do anything. And that was in January, early February. You can never say this just bang, you wake up one morning and there was a virus out there. If you the prominent, what are Robin and Brian and Rezco and Simon, we're not virologists, but if you just look at what prominent virologists would say. Even that cruise ship off Japan, there was Princess. It was massively contagious. So there's never. That's what's surprising. We're surprised. You should be surprised if you're surprised, because what we do for a living, we don't know what's going out there. And if prominent virologists are saying, look, here's a huge problem, and the market was making new highs, that was surprising. The market was just saying, oh, we don't believe you.
Yeah.
And everyone got locked into SARS. So no, this is a repeat of SARS. The amount of broker reports I saw on SARS. Now look at SARS, just stupidly reactive virus. Was just not paying attention, and that's what we say. Pay attention, and you've got to have some macro thinking in your methodology.
And I think also, you guys reacted quickly, and you're an asset manager that is nimble, so you're able to move the funds, which is a benefit of being in kind of that mid cap space or that mid tier space. Rob, what would you say, going into the crisis, you guys were positioned and reacted a certain way. How important is it with the decisions that you're making within the crisis itself for when we eventually do emerge on the other side?
Sorry, someone's mic's making sort of a humming down there.
Ryan, I think that might be you. If you could just mute there, thanks. Or someone else, I'm not sure.
Perfectly or allocate. We're flexible on what we're trying to do. We're trying to find those opportunities that have asymmetrical upside. So bottom-up ideas that really make sense, and then obviously look at the overall construction of risk in the portfolio. So it's not always always top down and bottom up. So last year was a great year for returns. The funds did exceptionally well. There were some great opportunities, some landmines that you had to miss.
Yes.
The economy just pretty tough, but the platinum miners did really well for us. And couple of other opportunities, but you do your research, find the opportunities, and that's why we think having your kind of guiding light, a benchmark cognizant portfolio is fine when everything's doing okay, but in the type of messy environment, you can't do that. And secondly, we found there was a lot of opportunities, where you could buy something. It was like in that equity fund, the turnover ratio went up to 165%. And we don't have a brokerage. We have no interest in a brokerage. We don't make any money if we buy and sell, like flat. We don't. The 165 was a damn lot of work. We were buying, you buy stuff, and sometimes how much more you're going to get back. So you someone's buying.
Mute his mic, please.
Sorry, guys, if you could just mute your mics, we're getting a bit of background noise there. So Rob, just to clarify, you were saying a high turnover in portfolio. So that means you guys were just buying and selling stocks with much more frequency than.
Our dream is you can buy something and it just sell it 10 years later. It goes up. But it's not. It's kind of. We use the sort of cricket analogy. You have to score a lot of singles, and there are a lot of balls you can just leave, just don't hit them, and then you find those signals, and then occasionally there's a 4 or 6. I'll be helmet got it. That really good.
Okay, Pierre, if you could just mute your mic, you got some sound coming in there. Yeah, I mean, you spoke about your good year last year, Rob. We were, our clients managed to benefit from that. We held you in our fund of funds. But I think it was also a good lesson because, we look back a few more years to that 2016. We held the value trend, not the equity fund at that stage, and that was a poor year for Rezco. And we got asked by our financial advisors, what is Rezco doing at that stage? Why the big cash holding? And I think the message that came through very clearly was that you can't be investing for the next month or the next year. You have to be investing through the cycle and let the underlying managers do what they do best. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to find good managers that do and understand what they do and why they do it. 2016 wasn't a great year. What we were doing, we got on way too early on to the underlying political problems that were bubbling in SA, and probably caused us to be a little bit too defensive in terms of local shares. But that's why you combine well with managers who do different stuff. But being nimble is important, and being highly reactive is not what you recommend anybody to do. Look at the teams, look at the quality of other teams, are they stable, and understanding what they do through various cycles. I do think the current environment helps mid-sized managers, and it probably will continue to do that going forward because you just need to be nimble. And when you're 600-700 billion manager, it's a lot harder to do it. It's still possible, but it's probably harder. I think the nimbleness is easier on the mid-sized managers. And there's some good mid-sized managers and some rubbish mid-sized managers. But you've just got you've got some advantages that make life a little bit easier.
And Rob, tell me, it's an emotional time, not just in the market, but as people, it's unnerving. This feels very, very strange, and we're living different lives at the moment. We're all connected on a Zoom call, which we probably wouldn't have done a couple months ago. But is it okay for investors to feel at least unnerved or possibly scared during this period? And how should they be navigating these strange times?
What's important is, we had a question asked on market timing. Should you ever do market timing? And it's one of those things that should have that little disclaimer, not to be done at home. if you're a professional investor, if you know why you're being reacting quickly is very different to being reactive. So advice to investors is don't be reactive, because normally that really means that by the time your fear and your pain is dialed up so much, you then take action on your portfolio. It's all in the price read. It's the worst possible time to do that. But investors are going to feel very uncomfortable. You've got to trust your financial advisor and their process in what you invested in and try and understand the cycle. But don't make reactive decisions. It's just costs you more money.
And I mean, investing is also part of that is the behavioral biases that creep in that we're all subject to. How do you and the team deal with the inherent biases of investing?
We try to do it. We do it a couple of ways. The one is that what are your biases? So we've got to face it. Look, are we going to get back into the market at the right time? So we know we could have a bias we probably find it easier to leave the party than to get back in. And you can be cautious. So you have an internal team, a lot of debate when to take on risk. It's almost like your wheel alignment pulls one way, you can react for it. So it's to know your weaknesses and know it well. The other one we do is we track with technology. Every email, say for example, say a share like Sasol. Every email, every decision, every buy, every sell tracks on the graph of Sasol, and we can pop it up and we can see who said what and why we did what we did. That's obviously important from bonus for analysts, and but it's also very important in teaching our team. You learn from your decisions to go, because you can never really remember why you did. There's a lot of research that you misinterpret why you made decisions, and you regard yourself probably as a bit cleverer, that you saw it coming, and go back and look at the actual emails you sent and the actual notes you made at the time. So use technology to do that, to try correct biases, and everything gets you've got school fees on everything, and learn and apply the school fees. You pay the school fees, you must get the benefit of them.
Absolutely, and I guess that's an ongoing process. You never master them entirely. There'll always be another bias that creeps up that you need to be aware of and held accountable for.
Yeah, we try to find a thinking. There's a great book called Super Forecasts by a guy called Ted Clark. Brilliant, this way to think. How do you forecast big things? So we try to really teach our people to forecast, to think. A lot of Daniel Kahneman stuff. So you've got the CFA type of mindset, which is great, very important. But there are probably 250,000 of them in the world. That is the market. So you've got to be trying to think, finding out, really trying to understand your thinking processes and your biases. And we spend a lot of time on that, very much part of what our investment philosophy and process.
Awesome. Guys, while you're listening in, if there are any questions, please just put them on the group chat. I'll put some of those to Rob shortly. Rob, maybe just the markets at the moment. We obviously had this precipitous sell-off from the beginning of February. We then recovered some of that, but we're still massively down for the year. Where are you guys, and maybe we can keep this to more local, since we're investors in your equity fund.
Sure.
Where are you seeing the current market opportunities and possibly the risks that maybe aren't that obvious?
Can you see my screen? I pushed a couple of buttons. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I've got some international growth that applies to us as well. Yeah, and it's I want to answer your question correctly, but I think like you see our market rallying hard yesterday, really on the international markets rallying. So the big one is really, how does this bear market play out? So we're just trying to do a bit of research on it. And one of our personal internal company things is that in the short term, the market teaches you to trade badly. So we had the big dip off in equities at the end of 2018, and we had some shares, particularly some of the mining shares, the end of 2015, had a huge crash. So both of those weren't to do with recessions. There were expectation in 2015 that China could have a hard landing, in 2018 that sometime in the future the Fed was tightening, the world was going to go, US and the world would go into recession. Now, one of our feelings is the market teaches you. You remember what happened recently, most recent, and you remember it the best, and you base your game plan on that, which can be a behavioral bias, which is very dangerous. So in terms of understanding how the bear market plays out, we provided it in some research that we actually pay for in the US, but our thinking on it, I've just taken their graphs, break it down into two groups. Bear markets that were just more spare markets. They didn't really, there wasn't a recession, there wasn't a sound economic reason. So if you look there on the bottom right, that 2018 bear market, is it clear to everyone? Can everyone see it? See the market plunge, we remember it well, and the best thing to do was like buy like mad at the bottom of the V. A similar one, 1987, just next to it on the left, was I was trading. I was running a small hedge fund at that stage, of junior investor PM, and that collapsed. There's no underside. It taught me a lot of lessons how quickly a market can give you a proper snort club. But there's no underlying economic problem. So if you look at a long-term graph of 1987, it's just a little blip. So you had a couple of these market dislocations that weren't really, I mean, like 1998, top right-hand corner, massive fall in the market. But there's an emerging market crisis, but that's the S&P we're looking at. The S&P still lost about 25%. So two issues, even in those type of markets, the market's still normally, you don't normally, a V bottom is not the only bottom. Everyone's talking, is it the V? You've got W's are more common than V's because the market tests the bottom. There's a lot of emotion there. But this is the point, the very important point to make locally and internationally. It is a recession, and it might even be a depression. Now, that's the US numbers, some stuff we got from McKinsey, their recent forecasts. Now, that if you look here, this is the forecasting either between an 8 and 13% hit for US GDP this year. And South Africa, the SARB are forecasting -5, I think, -4, probably about a 6-7% hit to our GDP this year, which is massive because if you look in the context, there's a little blip over here, that's the GFC. The US economy, our economies were down 5-6%. So what we're dealing here is bigger than GFC in terms of financial implications. Even with all the stimulus, there's a big economic hit this year. If you look US sort of numbers, ignore China there because I don't trust those numbers, but this has got US and Eurozone at the end of 2021. Still 10%. The GDP is still 10% lower.
Sure.
Which is concerning. So I think we can make the case it's a bear market with a recession. Okay. So we've got a couple there. We've got 8 of them. The bottom line as well, if you look at the little red circles, they don't just, we all remember 08 as a lovely V. But that's the bottom right-hand side there. But even that, it sort of plunged, went up a bit, plunged some more, rose a bit, fell some more. So it wasn't just a straight V. So to say right now, after that big fall in March, we're right at the bottom of V, it's turned, it's all going up. In fact, we've been saying, if you take 2 weeks ago, the market is too cheap to sell, but it's not cheap enough to buy. Our recommendation of that big rally would be I would lighten my holdings, to be honest. I'd cut back the exposure because it's unlikely that was the bottom of the market. You bottom of the fall. If you look at basically all of them, they can be these cascading declines. I'll zoom it in a little bit into these two, which was the 2000 from the .com bubble and then 9/11. You had that sort of, you had to be careful because a bear market, we've forgotten what a bear market looks like. This is a bear market, and I don't think it was over in 3 weeks because it's real economic hit. So we had the longest bull market in history. We now probably going to, it's not over in 3 weeks. That's our view. If we zoom in particularly on that, so the black there is the 2000 market, bear market. The blue is the GFC, and then the red is what we've just been through. It doesn't have it's basically up to, because the market was flat yesterday, so it's up till this last tick up in the market. Our view is that's not the end of it. It was a nice rally, but in the context of that, on those scenarios, the market is only about a third where it is now. It can have another big smack.
Okay. Rob, we're quickly running out of time here. This is fascinating. Maybe just to sum it up, we had one question from Thriven, and he's just asking, and this will link to your points you've just made, if this is a good period now for investors to enter the market, or should they wait for the economy? Wait for the economy to recover, sorry. So I'll just repeat that. So is it a good time for first-time investors to get into the market, or should they wait for the economy to stabilize somewhat?
I would be in a kind of lowest. I wouldn't pile fully into equities here. I'd probably be selling equities here at this stage. Because it's a better place to get in, and then January, if you're starting to commit on monthly amounts, great idea. And if you're in the right product, if you got some offshore, depends on the investor. But I mean, it's like our stable fund is doing well. So it's just rolling on about 13, 14% up year on year. You're going to be cash on that. So if you've got some spare cash, they're the right funds and the right products. That is the right time to get in. Piling fully into equities now, I don't think so. I think there's more pain.
Okay, fantastic. We've reached 10:30. We're going to wrap it up there. Rob, thanks so much for your insights. They were most valuable. I think it just helps us all to kind of navigate these volatile times. And to everyone who logged in, thanks very much for joining us. We hope you guys found it valuable. And yeah, stay safe out of there, everyone. Thank you.
Yep. Off to some.
Thanks,
so
Rob.
much. We appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.